Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name is, of course, Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about Guild Wars 2 in 2024. Today we're going to be talking about one of the newest major features to come to Guild Wars 2, which is, of course, player housing. This came in the most recent expansion, and it's something that is kind of an interesting topic because for a long time, a lot of the existing Guild Wars 2 community was concerned that we wouldn't get a lot of major feature releases in these smaller expansions that just last a year. But this really kind of goes against that logic. It puts a lot of new features on the table for these small expansions, and it's something that I was really excited to get to in the actual expansion progress. But before we get into it, though, I should mention I am a Guild Wars 2 or ArenaNet partner. Does this mean I won't say anything bad about Guild Wars 2? No, I'll say the good, I'll say the bad, I'll say the in-between. But it does mean that there are 2 referral or sponsored links that you'll find in the description of the video below. The first of these will allow you to try Guild Wars 2 for free, and using that link does support the channel. The second, it can be used to purchase any of the Guild Wars 2 expansions. Again, doing so through that link will help support the channel. With all that said, though, let's get into the rest of the video. So we're going to be talking about player housing today. I wasn't really sure that this was going to be the next video I made about this Guild Wars 2 expansion, as I've kind of just been organically going through the story, and whatever I get to, I talk about. Last episode was really about my first impressions. We'd gotten a hold of the spear and talked a little bit about that, but pretty quickly after getting your spear, you do a little bit more story progression, and all of a sudden it's very much about player housing. And first and foremost, they've woven this into the story, which, again, very Guild Wars 2 of them, but also really nice. I think a lot of other games would have it be this kind of side feature that you can go and unlock once you get to max level or something like that. No, the player house is very much woven into the story, to the point where you've gained some trust with the village of these Coden, and the chief is kind of saying, hey, I have this homestead that isn't being used. I know that you're new here and that you're kind of looking for a base of operation or somewhere to stay. Why don't you help us get it fixed up and you can kind of use it? And it's used as a great story device, not only to kind of weave ourselves into the land and into their culture and their village and stuff like that, because obviously we're going to talk to villagers to help get material to make the house prettier and stuff like that, but it's a great way for the chief and his son, which are kind of the 2 Coden that we interact with the most so far. It allows us to see glimpses of their past. For instance, we kind of go into the old homestead at the start, and it's worn down. It was really the son who was supposed to maintain it, which obviously, as most sons would, has not been doing as great of a job as he could, especially if no one living there. So we go and help clean it up. Through helping, we find, kind of a trinket that belonged to the mother that we've learned has passed on, and we get some story there, which is really nice. And that continues even as we progress further and start crafting kind of the first furniture pieces. It's a bed that has this quilt essentially that has a lot of importance to the father and son again, and it really makes them reminisce about the old times and about when the kid was so young that he would kind of sleep with his parents and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting and good way to tell story, which I think is really nice. And I think that's kind of going above and beyond when it comes to a feature. I think a lot of MMO players would be fine if they did just get to max level and there was, essentially a quest that's called player housing, and you do that quest and now you have player housing. Like, I think a lot of people would be fine with that being the case, and this is taking it to a whole new step where it is woven in. The other beauty of it being woven in is that there is no real way to miss it, right? You're being introduced to player housing through the story that you have to complete the entire story of the expansion. And on ArenaNet's side, there's a lot of development going into this feature, so they want to make sure players are aware of it and can access it, and that's exactly what this does. So that's really good there. Talking about story and all that, let's put that to the side here. Let's talk about the feature itself. So as far as I'm aware, there's only one homestead that is in this expansion, and it's the one that we're introduced here to. I would, if this is a successful feature, and I have to assume they've built it with the intention of having additional homesteads added in future expansions. And it would be a really clever way for them to weave it into future stories. You're going to a new region of the world. They give you, again, another different, feeling homestead. Maybe it's inside a cave or something like that or whatever. And it's a really good way for them to build out that part of the next chapter of the story, right? As well as kind of giving you a collection of these homesteads, which is a really cool way to do things. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. The other thing here is that Guild Wars 2 is a buy-to-play game. They have a cash shop. There's, an infinite amount of options that they can start pumping into the cash shop for player housing. And generally speaking, Guild Wars 2 has always done a pretty good job of having really cool stuff in both the game for players to collect and in the cash shop for players to purchase if they like as well. So I kind of trust them to do that, and it would only make sense that they would try and wet their beak a bit with this new feature as well. So that's kind of what I see going on for the future here. Like I said, you get one homestead, and it is quite large. What's a little tricky when you first get into it is it's a very big map, but you're actually kind of contained to just a segment of it. And actually, there's a mission where you're cleaning it up and you get access to more of it, and then you're kind of restricted from parts of it after, which is the one thing that felt a little bit clunky, because you kind of walk too far and it'd be like, oh, you're going out of bounds, and it'll teleport you back, but you're like, I was just over there when I was doing this cleaning mission. So that part's a little bit clunky. The way I understand it is the more you upgrade your mastery that's associated with the home, or upgrade different parts of your home, you'll get more access to different areas of your home. So it is a really big area, and I suspect you'll unlock more of it as you become more proficient in I think it's like handiworker or something like, or handiworking, that is the actual mastery tied with the homestead. So that's kind of cool. It gives a good sense of progression too, which is always a question, is, how much do they gatekeep different elements of player housing? But it certainly looks like they want it to be something that you are progressing, which is nice. It'll give you kind of that sense to continue increasing things, but you do get access to a fair bit just by going through the story, and I'll kind of tell you what those elements are. So going back to unlocking this, we clean it out, and then the first thing we have to do is get material to build a bed, which we do. We go to the town, we get the material, we go back. That's when we learn about kind of this history of the quilt and all that. But they have you place the bed, and they're directing you to put it upstairs. I place it not great to begin, but then you can use a lot of the tools that are available to make it exactly how you want. And they've done a pretty good job with this feature, where I think, almost anything you'd want at a baseline is there. You have the ability to drop, specific pieces of decoration. You have the ability to resize them, rotate them, scale them, move them. There's even some quality of life stuff that's like, just kind of an edit undo. One of the pieces that caught me off guard, and you'll probably see it in the video here, when you're going through the editing process, you actually have to click a button that says accept the changes, because if you just kind of go through the process of editing and just escape out, it'll just revert it back to where it was, which I think makes sense once you've done it once or twice, but it was frustrating because I took a long time to really position the bed once, and then I just escaped and it went back, and I was actually confused about where it went because it was behind me, and I was like, did I just delete this bed somehow? But no, it just reverted back, and I had to go back through it. But it did show me, just even using the tools kind of 2 or 3 times, I became a lot quicker at doing the same thing, because I'm just used to kind of seeing the angle I need to stand in to get it exactly lined up and stuff like that, which is really good. So that was really cool. There's some additional features, such as the ability to kind of fly as this bumblebee and kind of get these aerial views of your plot, which obviously would help a lot in terms of decorating outside probably, but also I'm sure in the building a little bit as well. The building itself is quite big. You have a lot of space in there, again, with specific doors to kind of tell you, you will unlock this eventually. So it kind of gives you the idea that you're going to have more and more space, which is good. And once you go through the story, you do get awarded a few recipes and a few different crafting material, which is good, which is a good segue into how do we actually craft stuff. This comes back to the handy worker mastery. It caught me off guard because it's a little confusing because it looks like a profession or a crafting profession, which they have in Guild Wars 2, but it's actually unlocked via the mastery system. So, I was going through the story steps and they're like, get the crafting material for your bed, go to the workbench and craft it. And it was like, you don't have, level 1 access to this crafting profession. And it took me a long time to figure out why I didn't. And I'm sure it explained it throughout the actual story, and I probably just didn't really pay attention. But you have to go through and you have to unlock the first mastery point in that mastery to have level 1 of that crafting profession. So very similar to the spear, I was back in the open world. I was doing, whatever I wanted to do to earn XP to level up the mastery system, which again was reminiscent of Heart of Thorns, where it was more about doing that versus doing these green bars. They've had a few green bars in the story since last we spoke, but they definitely seem to be relying more on the mastery system and just experience gain, which is very nice to see. And it doesn't take long to get the first kind of bar worth of experience. You do that, you come back, you can craft your bed, which is great. You set that up, you progress the story, and they kind of reward you with a crate of additional supplies. And that's where I was able to craft a couple more items. I chose kind of this lamp to go right beside my bed, which actually has the functionality to turn on and off, which was really nice. And then a storage chest in front of my bed, which doesn't have any storage that you can access necessarily. I don't know if there is, other storage things that will have different storage. Storage is pretty accessible in the game in general, so I don't think it's like something that I was like, oh my god, storage would be so good. It was just going to be cool if you could access it. I know there is a lot of really cool functioning items that are coming as well, either that I haven't unlocked yet or that haven't been added and will come in kind of future patches. But they have like armory statues where like you can have your different weapons and your different armor on display in your house, which is really cool in Guild Wars 2, that is so focused on fashion to be able to show off, if it's your legendary greatsword or whatever. It would be a very cool thing to have hanging up in your house and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see what I could do. It definitely feels like a pretty fleshed out housing system. I don't think, if we're to use WildStar player housing as the absolute peak of player housing, I'd say this is, like an 8 out of 10 or something like that, a 7 out of 10. It seems quite refined, and I know that there is more functionality coming, and obviously this is the tip of the iceberg in terms of what I'm able to do, in terms of what I've done in this video. So I'm excited to see what comes from it. But yeah, if you've checked out player housing, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Is it something that you've been waiting for? I know a lot of people have been waiting for this feature to be added to Guild Wars 2. I know there's a lot of MMOs that this is a feature that people really want. Like when you look at World of Warcraft, it's one of the most asked for features since many expansions ago. So it is really nice that Guild Wars 2 was able to deliver on it. And I think it's a great game for it, where there is so much focus on customization and really making your character expression feel as powerful as possible. And this is a great way to do it. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you checked it out in Guild Wars 2? What were your thoughts? But yeah, thanks for watching the video. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.